Hey A&Pers, this is Dr. Jones checking in. This is A&P II Lab 2 video, I think 7, and we're doing the veins now. So we're going to start with the first vein on the list, which you can see in Mr. Creepy Head here. And it is this blue stripe at the top, right here. This is the superior sagittal sinus. This is a vein that is in the dural fold of the falx cerebri. So the blue stripe, superior sagittal sinus. Next, we're going to talk about the jugulars. And I forgot my stick. Sorry, moving back. I know. Okay, we're back. So, and most of these arteries and veins, they match. Subclavian artery, subclavian vein. The external iliac artery, external iliac vein, most of these match. They run together and the names match. In the neck, not so much. So in the neck, we have the common carotids up. The common carotid splits into an internal carotid artery and an external carotid artery. The veins are completely different. So in the veins, they're not even carotids, they're jugulars. And there's no common. So the external jugulars are these skinny ones, and the internal jugular veins run with the common carotid arteries. So common carotids up, internal jugulars down. Okay, so when the internal jugular meets with the subclavian, becomes the brachiocephalic. So this is the left brachiocephalic, and this is vein, and this is the right brachiocephalic vein. As you may recall, that artery right behind there, from here to here, the first branch off of the abdominal aortic arch, is the brachiocephalic artery, the brachiocephalic trunk, and it is unpaired. So if you put left or right on that, you make it wrong. But this is the left brachiocephalic vein, and this is the right brachiocephalic vein. They come together to make the inferior vena cava, which feeds into the right atrium with all the rest of the deoxygenated blood from the systemic circuit. So let's talk about the veins. The deep veins will match the arteries in location and name. So here, these are the subclavian veins, run with subclavian arteries, and then the axillary artery, and here's your axillary vein with a zip tie to mark it. And then the brachial vein runs with the brachial artery, and then the lateral one is a radial artery. And if you follow this one, the lateral one here is the radial artery, and the medial one is the ulnar artery. And you've got the anastomoses here, the arches. So this will be the palmar venous arch. Remember in the arteries, it was the palmar arch. In the veins, it's the palmar venous arch. And of course, digital veins. So if you're taking my A&P II Lab 2 test, you need to add those terms, please. The palmar venous arch, P-A-L-M-A-R, second word venous, V-E-N-O-U-S, arch, A-R-C-H, and also the digital veins, digital, D-I-G-I-T-A-L, and veins, V-E-I-N-S. So if you are if you're taking my test, you are responsible for those terms. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so now let's go in order of blood flow, because that was backwards. So the blood from the digital veins, the palmar venous arches, and then it will go up either the medial ulnar vein or the lateral radial vein, and that comes together to make the brachial vein. It goes through the armpit. It's called the axillary vein, and again, axillary is AX, which is different than auxiliary, which means extra, that's AUX. And then the subclavian vein, where it goes under the clavicle, and when it meets with the internal jugular that runs with the common carotid artery, the internal jugular vein and the subclavian vein make the, from here to here, right brachiocephalic vein, and that meets with the left brachiocephalic vein to make the inferior vena cava that goes into the right atrium. Okay, so those are the deep veins. The deep veins match the arteries that we covered. Now we need to talk about the superficial veins. Now, when you're cold, the superficial veins will shut down and all the blood will go through the deep veins that run with the deep arteries. And there's heat transfer that goes on. It's really pretty cool because it cools the blood as it goes out to your fingers and then warms the blood as it goes back into your body. But when it's hot, your blood goes, those deep veins aren't used as much, and your blood goes through these superficial veins, which run closer to the surface. So the superficial veins, let's start here. This is the cephalic vein, and cephalic means head, and this vein is right in the middle of your forearm, and I don't know. So the cephalic vein then jogs out and then goes up, and of these superficial veins, it enters the deep veins closest to the head, so cephalic, I don't know. And then the medial superficial vein is the basilic vein. Now be very careful here, because in the head, we had the basilar artery where the two vertebrals come together. That's B-A-S-I-L-A-R. But this is the basilic, B-A-S-I-L-I-C, the basilic vein. And that is the medial superficial vein. Now, this connection between the cephalic and the basilic is called the median cubital vein. And that's cubital, C-U-B-I-T-A-L, like elbow, like your antecubital fossa is your inside of your elbow. Okay, and then this vein we're not learning. Okay, so those are the veins of the head and neck. And we're at 7 minutes. So let's see if we can find those on Flat Stanley. So we've got digital veins up the sides of the fingers. We've got a palmar venous arch. And let's see. The brachial vein is cut here. So this is your cephalic vein. Cephalic vein jogs out, runs up, and it's the closest of the superficial veins to the head. The medial superficial vein is the basilic vein, and that's where it enters the brachial vein. And then the connection between is the median with an N, median cubital with a T vein. And then in the head and neck, let's see, these will be the internal jugulars coming down that run with the common carotids going up. And this model does not show the external jugulars, but you do see the left and right subclavian, the left and right internal jugulars, and how they make the left brachiocephalic vein, the right brachiocephalic vein. Those get together to make the superior vena cava, which dumps blood from the top third of the body into the right atrium. Okay, so that's all about veins on the top half of the body. We'll make the veins from inferior to the abdomen a separate video. So this is A&P II Lab 2 video, I don't know, I think 7? Yeah, 7 sounds good. So thanks as always for tuning in. The education must go on. Dr. J out.